Welcome to Tabletop Gaming Guild. Today, I'll be continuing my top 100 games all time with numbers 71 through 80. Now, if you watch the show at all, you know many members of this channel are huge fans of Eric Lang. James, in particular, might be upset that one of his titles is lower on my list. Kind of pales in comparison with Blood Rage or Rising Sun, his more popular titles. It's not nearly as well known, and that is The Godfather. This is an excellent game, though where Eric Lang is huge on theming and he loves combat, this is a little bit more Euro. It still has a very strong theme, but it's not nearly as strong as, say, Blood Rage. So Godfather is a combination worker placement area control game. So the first half of each round is going to be placing out your units. So the Dons are the leaders that can go into the larger provinces. So they can actually go and attach to 3 separate sections of the board, and they take backroom deals that are associated with each section, whereas your general gangsters will go into the province themselves and they go onto the worker placement space in the province and take the front room deal of the different worker placement spots. So with those smaller workers, you're going to get good actions, but you're only going to get 1 action, whereas the Dons are going to be taking multiple actions with 1 turn. And you can get quite a lot out of that. They also have a huge impact on the second section of the round, which is the area control. So after everybody's taken their actions, you're going to look at who has the most influence, so most units attached to each province, so the workers count for 1 province, whereas the Dons will count to 2 to 3 provinces, depending on how many they're touching. If you have the most influence in a province, you get a little token there. At the end of the game, whoever has the most tokens in the province gets extra points. You also have extra benefits you get for people taking actions in areas where you control. Where the theme really comes through is in the violent jobs. So you have certain jobs that are attached to the Tommy gun resource, and when you use those, you're basically knocking off rivals and throwing them in the river so they sleep with the fishes. There's a little bit meanness to it, and it definitely has a huge impact on the area control of the second part of the round, and it also frees up space for if you wanted a specific action. So I thought mechanically and thematically that is really, really cool and fun. Awesome game by an awesome designer. You're going to see a lot more of his games higher up. This is definitely not his most popular, but it's still a solid, amazing game. So before we get into the big name titles, we have one more slightly obscure title called Via Nebula. Now, I would consider this a 3X game. So you have the Explore, Expand, Exploit, but you don't have Exterminate. So it's more a resource gathering and building, but you do have to clear fog from the map. Very, very solid game for what it's trying to do. I love the exploration element. Exploration as a mechanic is something a lot of games try to do, but not a lot of them do it very well. There's the randomness that needs to be involved in exploration. They can be done through drawing cards or flipping tiles. But there's also the visual nature of it, which is the harder thing to get right. This one does it pretty well. You can thematically clearly see where you have and have not explored, because everything nobody's explored is covered with fog. Kind of a literal fog of war. So if you find exploration and building exciting, this is definitely a game to try out. One of the best in that genre. My number 78 could be intimidating to a lot of people because it does look and sound like a heavy war game. But it's really an exploration and trading game called Francis Drake. This game is broken into 2 sections. So you have the first half, which is resource gathering. That's going to be done through a ratchet system. So basically you have a path you can go along, and you can go as far as you want on that path, but you can never go backwards. So the faster you go, the sooner you get out to sea into the next round, and you have advantage for exploration, but you're not going to get as many resources along the way. One of the resources you can gather allows you to travel for longer. So so you can go further out, so you can go to regions that other people can't. Then you don't have to worry about competing with other people to make sure you get to go where you need to go and do what you need to do. This game takes a pretty heavy theme and makes it nice, light, and approachable. I do like how they split it into 2 sections, so you have the resource gathering and then the exploration and combat. I really do love how they handled this theme in a way that doesn't have a lot of luck, yet doesn't rely on statistics and charts, so it keeps it simple but not luck driven. We're up to number 77, and we're getting into super popular games with underwater cities. Now this game has been favorably compared to Terraforming Mars. I think the comparison is not terribly fair. I mean, this is a very different playstyle. The big thing that it does share in common, though, is a lot of combo building card play. The main mechanism of this game is really interesting. So you have a worker placement mechanic on the board that is color-coded, where certain colors are better than others. But when you go to a worker placement spot, you also get to play a card. And if that card color matches the worker placement on the board, then you also get the action on the card. The key thing that makes that interesting is, well, for one color, the board spot is strong. That means the card matching color is going to be weaker, whereas the weak board spots are going to have strong cards. It's a really cool mechanic. I haven't seen it done anywhere else. It's a really solid game. Lots of fun. A little bit on the heavy end, but definitely worth your time. My number 76 has been on Dan's top 10, and it combines a race mechanic with a campaign game. So that's Maracaibo. So in Maracaibo, you're traveling around the Caribbean, and the spaces your ship stops at are basically worker placement spots that allow you to take certain actions. It also adds a lot of interest by having quest spots on the board that you can do and give you some extra points, and also progress the story that this campaign is going through. It was kind of interesting in that a lot of times we went for the story and to try to progress what was going on playing this campaign, even if it wasn't necessarily the best action for that turn. A lot of fun. The campaign is great, but once you're done in the campaign, there's no reason you can't play it again or play it without the campaign elements. Unlike a legacy game, it's not done by stickers, it's done with tiles that you just temporarily place on the board. It's a really fun game. It feels like a light legacy game, but it is actually replayable. My next has dropped a lot for me. It was at one time on my top 10, as well as some of the other members of the show. Because I play so many games nowadays, and I'm learning so many rules, I am less forgiving about a poor rulebook, and I really do not like how Fantasy Flight handles their rulebooks. Star Wars Rebellion is an amazing 2-player game where one player plays as a rebellion. They have to pick a base and use tactics and cards to try to distract the Empire and keep them from finding their base, and the Empire is constantly searching the universe, trying to find a planet that has that base, and they have so much power that you're just constantly building. If they do find that base, they can usually just send so much power to that one planet and just annihilate everything. Meanwhile, the Rebellion does have the functionality of potentially moving that base, but there is a big penalty for that, so they have to think about when that's happening. So it's an incredible, highly intense game with an overly complicated rule set. Fantasy Flight and Portal both have this issue of, I want to give these games to the table. I want to play them all the time, but I feel like every time I play it, I need to reread the rule set and refresh because I don't necessarily get to the table as often as I'd like. And I don't want to reread these rules. So, while this is an amazing game and you could play all the time and really, really enjoy, especially if you're into 2-player games, I personally don't get it to the table much, and it's dropped a lot because of that. If you watch the show at all, you know Eric Lang is clearly James's favorite designer. I really do love Eric Lang, but my personal favorite is Jamie Stegmaier. And Jamie Stegmaier puts a lot of amazing games out, Red Rising aside. Even in his less popular games, like Euphoria, are still incredible games. So Euphoria has a very interesting theme. You play as a leader running a dystopian society, and you want to keep your people productive and happy, but not too intelligent, because the more intelligent they are, the more they question your leadership, and you might have rebellions, people leaving because they're just not happy with the way the society is being run. Theme aside, this is a track-based worker placement, so you're going to different worker placement spots that'll push you up on various tracks for each faction, and you do have some player powers because you're given a special worker that will have a small bonus for you. Overall, this is a really fun game, and if one of my least favorite Stonemaier games is this high up on my list, you can only imagine how great all his other games are. Number 73 is a large title, both physically and in popularity, though it was talked about a lot when it first came out. The discussion about it has kind of waned a little bit, and I think that's largely to do with bloat. So this was one of the first Kickstarters I got that was like really a bit too much. It's an excellent game, and that's Heroes of Land, Air, and Sea. This is a 4X game where you can explore, expand, exploit, and exterminate, and it's not terribly long. Generally, 4X games are very long, and this isn't. Each faction starts off relatively similarly, but as you unlock more content for that faction, you're gonna get new abilities, so basically you can teach them the game, and then they can learn what each thing does as they get access to it. So that is really cool. But where it has a problem is it has all this really cool extra content, but there's so much of it that it ends up being in 3 big boxes, and it's a lot to take with you when you go anywhere. So you really can only play this at home, and even then it's still kind of a pain to pull out and set up. A really good insert, or a custom box rather, that fits everything would be really helpful, but also probably make it very heavy if you had it all in one box. But despite that, it's still a phenomenal game. I would probably actually rank this higher if I only had the base box. My number 72 had a major fall from grace. This was a game that had a massive buzz. Then when it was actually finally released, it got largely derided. Big part of that was probably because of the initial buzz, because Seafall is an excellent, amazing game, at least in my opinion, but a terrible legacy game. You are exploring the ocean, finding islands, settling little colonies, and you can trade, you can pillage, you have lots of things you can do in this game. And it's a really, I find, a very satisfying game. And the legacy element, though, works on the initial half, but the further you get into it, the less interest you have in actually pursuing the legacy elements. You're not very well incentivized to do so. Progression is really hard to figure out and requires some major out-of-the-box thinking. That there's nothing in this game to imply that that might be the case. Eventually we hit a point where we couldn't figure out how to progress and had completely lost interest in the progression, and I ended up having to look up how I should have progressed and realized we never would have figured it out. With all that said though, because of all the negative reviews and bad press that this got, it's been frequently available for almost nothing. So quite likely you can find this for $10 or less, at which point I would absolutely pick this up. A great game, would have been in my top 10 if it wasn't for the breakdown of the legacy element. The last one in this set of 10 is a classic that was extremely popular when it first came out, has still maintained some of that popularity, and has actually been re-released a few times, and they recently made a new version of it. Or relatively recently made a new version. and that's Castles of Burgundy. So Castle of Burgundy is not the most attractive game, but it had some unique concepts. Castles of Burgundy is a dice placement game, so you're rolling the dice and the pips that come up determine what actions you can take with them. You can go and try to get new tiles, you can use it to place those tiles, or you can use it to make trades. You can also use certain resources to manipulate the values of those dice. So it's a relatively simple game that has a lot of options and a lot of flexibility for how you build your strategy. So lots of fun. Stefan Feld is definitely a prolific designer, and this is one of his best titles. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to check us out on other social media such as Instagram and Facebook, and don't forget to like and subscribe.